Motorola has changed the way they build their Moto X phones from the second generation all the way up to the fourth generation. And whilst this build might be a bit different, is the functionality any different? And should you even consider either of these phones? Hey guys, my name is Ryan Thomas for Failtech, and today I'm going to tell you about that. This is the Moto X second generation versus the fourth generation. Oddly enough, let's start with talking about specifications. Now, the Moto X was never meant to be the top-end phone. In fact, the original Moto X was pretty underpowered and had a pretty low-end screen, but it was all about the functionality of the phone. The second generation has a Snapdragon 801, being one of the top-tier CPUs at the time, with 2GB of RAM, and it didn't come with expandable storage. The new Moto X4 has 6GB of RAM in some configurations, 64GB of storage, and a Snapdragon 630, which isn't the top end, but it's kind of lower end, even though it's more powerful than the 801. With especially more power efficiency and again lower down in the lineup. It's not meant to be flagship specs here. So even though you get a technically higher end chip in the older phone, it's actually nowhere near as powerful as the new one. It doesn't have as much RAM and storage is limited. And get this, the new X4 has microSD expansion where the old one didn't. So overall, we're already seeing a versatility change here in the Moto X2 versus X4. Next up is that the Moto X4 has a fingerprint scanner where the X2 doesn't. It's incredibly fast, like it's nuttily fast on the front of the X4, and you don't get one at all on the X2. The battery has also been hefted up from 2300 in the X2 to 3000 in the X4, and with a more power efficient system on a chip as well. My god, you're getting much better battery life here. But what does this all mean? Okay, maybe I'm bashing on the X2 a bit. The X2 is one of my favorite phones of all time, and it feels amazing in the hand. It's got a soft touch rubbery back to it with an incredibly solid feeling metal rail around the outside that's all symmetrical, versus the X4, which has a metal rail around the outside but a glass back, more importantly, and it kind of feels more like the fad and the fashion in 2018 and 2017, with glass phones being like the main thing now versus the older, weirder, let's say, built phone in the Moto X2. So actually, overall, I prefer the build of the X4, but I prefer the feel in the hand of the X2 just due to that soft touch back. For ports, both have headphone jacks and micro USB ports of some kind. The X4 has Type-C and the X2 has micro B. They both run at pretty much the same speeds, and headphone jacks, again, it's pretty much the same in terms of the external functionality. Both run games, software, social media, anything that you'd be using a mid-range phone for. These phones do pretty much amazingly, actually. The X4 has a much more powerful system on the chip, much more RAM, enabling more multitasking. I'm not sure what people do in the mid-range sector of phones, but I would expect a lot of social media usage, and my friend Ross uses the X4 and loves it just for that. Displays are probably the most important things on phones of these kinds of specifications, as the screen is the standout feature, and both have similar sizes and similar resolutions, 5.2 inches and 1080p. However, the screen technologies are very different. The X4 has gone to an IPS display, which, by the way, is not a hindrance. It's amazing. It's a very sharp, very punchy, very vibrant and brilliant display, and that's amazing. Like, it's one of the best displays in a budget phone. Okay, it's not incredibly sharp, like it's not 1440p or anything, but 1080p at 5.2 inches is, in my opinion, a great sweet spot between sharpness and battery life consumption. And also, because it's a lower resolution, it means the system on the chip can drive higher frame rates because it doesn't have to push so many pixels, which is great. But the Moto X second generation has an AMOLED screen. Now, okay, it might not be as up to date and it might not be as responsive as the X4. I have no way of telling this. They feel just as responsive as each other. However, it's got those beautiful inky blacks, which in darkness just completely wipes the floor with the X4. Now in daylight, they get about the same brightness and they're both nearly as punchy as each other, so it's kind of difficult, but in the darkness, you don't get that border around the outside of the screen because, of course, in the darkness, black is black and the pixels are just turned off completely. In retrospect, you're not going to go wrong with either of these devices. Like, I wouldn't say that either of the displays are bad. I think they're both very, very good contenders for a mid-range phone in 2018. But let's talk about cameras now. We're going to flip over to the back. On the Moto X2, we had Motorola's pretty shoddily made old camera. So it's a 13 megapixel sensor. It can shoot UHD video. It's got f2.2 glass. It's really not amazing. It hasn't got optical image stabilization, and the software is pretty limited in how you take your photos and videos. The camera's decent, but it's really not amazing. Like, if you're buying this phone for 70 or 80 pounds, then you get what you pay for. You're not getting crazy quality, and the lack of OIS in something like this just is a bit of a problem. And of course, no microSD expandable storage either. So, like, there isn't really a main reason to go with the X2 if you're really into your camera. The Moto X4 has a pretty cool setup on the back. It's got a 12 megapixel sensor and an 8 megapixel sensor. The main one is just primary. It kind of shoots at a 24-ish millimeter equivalent, and it shoots UHD video in slow motion and everything like that. And then the second setup is an 8 megapixel wide angle setup that shoots kind of wide angle video that you'd usually see on something like LG. It shoots photos and videos in this wide angle format that I really like. It's not quite as good as the 12 megapixel, but it's definitely not bad. So if you're looking for good camera phones, the X4 blows the X2 out of the water, and rightly so, to be honest. It's quite a lot newer and more expensive. For selfie cameras, there's pretty much no competition. There's a stupidly low resolution on the X2 and a stupidly high resolution on the X4. You're going to get better selfies with the X4, and you get a front flash as well. For software, this is where things change a lot for Motorola, because in my opinion, the software is the reason to go Motorola. A lot of people say OnePlus or Pixel do really good software, and I tend to agree. But Motorola, in my opinion, does it the best. And when I say the best, I mean it's basically stock Android, but with some incredibly useful features. Maybe it's not as customizable as OnePlus, but you get things like the always-on display that lifts up, and then you can hold and tap and show your notifications, so you don't just see how many notifications you have. You can actually interact with the always-on display, and it doesn't light up all the pixels. This is something that works really well on the X2, works not quite as well on the X4 because of course it's an IPS panel, but at the same time really not bad. I loved it on the X2 and Ross loves it on the X4, and I mean, what can I say? Like, this is an absolutely stunning feature that should be pretty much implemented into every phone. Kind of makes Samsung's always on display look shoddy. Now, of course, by default, the X2 isn't going to have the latest software, whereas the X4 does. Has, I believe, Oreo now, which is pretty incredible for a mid-range phone. And Motorola is pretty good at serving updates to you in a timely manner, and they are quality updates at that. I really like Motorola software. I believe that is the reason to go with either of these phones. In terms of the usability, of course, the X4 is going to be better. It's newer, it's faster, it's got newer software. And I mean, yeah, it's got more features technically with that micro SD expansion, fingerprint scanner, an extra camera, things like that. But it is around double the price. So, okay, it's just below £200, but the X2 is just below £100. So if you're on a tight budget, go with the X2. And if you've got a slight bigger budget, go with the X4. Both of these phones are going to last you for a decently long time, especially if you're good at installing custom ROMs, because the X2 is like really cool for that. Like, you can get some crazy software on there. And that's pretty much it. Both have front firing mono speakers, which sound pretty incredible. Like, they're comparable with each other. They're pretty good. They're Motorola. They're solid. Both have amazing build quality. And the IP67 water and dust resistance in the Moto X4 is a bonus. I mean, apart from the glass back, which I technically don't like that much just because it doesn't enable wireless charging. It is a glass back, it's following the fads, and it's kind of working for Motorola. A lot of their phones have glass backs now, and their marketing seems to be doing a good job. So if you like that, great, but if you're like me and you prefer a metal or soft touch back, X2 is the way to go. But it doesn't have that IP67 water and dust resistance, so you're more likely to crack the X4, but you're also less likely to get it clogged with water and expose water damage within the phone. It's a real toss-up for me. It's hard to give a concrete answer. I would probably go with the X4 just because it's newer, significantly newer. It's got more technology inside of it, and you've got that expandable storage, but some people will go with the X2. So they're really trading blows for me. I think I prefer the X2, but in terms of usability, it's just not quite as good as the X4. I really like the design of the X2. It's just one of my favorite designs of all time. And yeah, the X4 wins, and I recommend both. That's pretty much it from me. Hopefully the audio is a little bit better. Again, excuse the teeth. I've had so much coffee and tea today. Trying to stay awake and finish uni work is a bit of a hassle. Also, sorry about these late uploads. I've got a lot balancing at the moment, and hopefully we can get more timely update videos to you guys. I'm actually in the process of exporting Note 4 with like new custom software on it, so hopefully that's out to you very, very soon, and getting the most out of your smartphone camera videos coming very soon too. Anyway guys, my name is Ryan Thomas for Failtech. I want to thank my patrons so much. You guys are amazing for your continued support. Also, please do leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new around here to never miss a video like this one, and go and follow me on social media because I mean, we're awesome over there. Anyway guys, again, my name is Ryan Thomas for Failtech. I'm going to close out this video and get on with uni work. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.